Hey everyone, it's great being here again. For Ask Me Anything, today I've got two of the most brilliant product managers at Dynatrace with me who are working on the log product. Actually, Dynatrace is a big company, so we have a lot of components coming into the log pipeline, making sure you guys get the best experience we can provide you. So we're with us, Michał and Thomas, who are both a key part of the log product. Before we dive in and answer some of your questions and discuss some of the stuff we have in the logs product and some of the roadmap stuff, I would like to ask you something first, kind of. So this is a session is about developers. So what's your favorite language? Don't be shy. Go ahead, write your favorite programming language into the chat. It would be super valuable for us to learn more about who we're chatting with and how can we best tailor our responses to you guys. So, Thomas, what's your favorite programming language while we wait for the folks to start typing?
Yeah. So it's either Ruby or it's Objective-C.
Very
Yeah. So
peculiar choices.
depending. Huh?
Very peculiar choices, not the mainstream stuff.
Yeah. That's my upbringing as a software developer.
Are you a mobile developer? You used to be?
Yeah. So I started as an iOS developer. So in 2008. Or whenever it was that you were able to write iOS applications for the first time, and that was with Objective-C. And I think it's an elegant language, as a superset of C with an merging with the concepts of small talk. So yeah, I think it's vastly underrated. And now it's history.
Could be.
Well,
Could be.
mostly.
Michal, how about you? What's your favorite one?
Yeah, I must admit I also liked a lot Ruby on Rails, especially with the Rails framework. That was something I really enjoyed doing. But these days, I'm following all the updates from Flutter, so the framework that is using Dart as programming language for all the cross-platforms application. But honestly speaking, when I have to prototype something quickly, then I typically go with JavaScript. And also, our platform, right? The app engine is using in the background JavaScript and TypeScript. So whenever I'm prototyping some applications for Dynatrace platform with app engine, then I typically go with JavaScript.
Yeah, I have to agree. I personally today, I think JavaScript is my favorite. It's a good balance between flexibility, ease of use, and performance. It can get hard to read all the time, but it's a good start. But let's hear more about you guys. Kind of, you share a bit more about your roles within Dynatrace and what's your responsibilities?
Sure, let me start now because we started with you, Thomas. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm Michał. I'm working at Dynatrace in the logs area, as you, Liran, said. And here I'm building all the logs products and capabilities together with my product and engineering team. We are on a mission to deliver answers from logs. So for us, we know that the log volumes are growing, and our mission here is to make sure that you're getting all the relevant answers from the vast amount of logs we're collecting for you.
How about you,
Yeah.
Thomas?
Yeah, so I'm product manager with Open Pipeline, and this is a really exciting component now that we are working here at Dynatrace that we've been working at this for, I would say, now 1.5 to 2 years. Really great team. The team is partly also from Gdansk, where Michał is based. I'm based in Austria. And with Open Pipeline, we're really setting a new foundation for the ingest to Dynatrace. We're starting with logs, but it's really about unification of all the different data types that come into Dynatrace: logs, events, biz events, metrics, spans, and we are all about scale today, or at this moment. It's and not only about throughput. I mean, we are targeting petabyte per day of ingest, because that's what our customers, or some of our customers, definitely need. but we're also about scaling the ingest management, so that teams and developers can get access, because I really believe that the data quality increases when you're, as a developer, can be responsible for the ingest and for the processing in ingest, filtering and parsing the data. As a developer, you know best what you put in those log lines, and as such, you're the best person also to get it out again.
Yeah, so kind of open pipeline expands on the vision of Grail, of providing a huge database where you can put anything and everything and have complete control over it, and a lot of democratization of the data. So open pipeline brings that to the next stage with allowing you to ingest everything in a uniform way and tailor it to your needs and adapt it. And so some cases, use cases, schema on grid is awesome. In other cases, you might want to adapt the data as it's coming in. So you have the flexibility of doing fancy stuff on both ends, shall we say.
Yes, and it's also a lot about being compliant. Maybe you don't, schema on read, that's, as you said, it's a great option. But in some cases, you must prevent sensitive data from being persisted. And to be compliant, it could be sensitive data from your users. It could be sensitive data from any employees in your company, or also maybe IP related or revenue related things that must not end up in storage, or at a specific place in the storage with specific access. And with open pipeline, you can make sure that that you are clean in that sense.
You know what? There is also like one of my favorite feature actually in open pipeline that I really can't wait for, is the ability to transform different data types from one to another. So from instance, from logs to the busy events and things like that, that afterwards the analytics part is also much more tailored to your use case, like transforming logs to busy events while extracting business related information from the logs is super relevant for our customers as well. And I just can't wait for this one.
I think one of the most common use cases we're hearing of is transforming logs into metrics. Sometimes you just have an old application that's piping an enormous amount of logs, and while you don't necessarily care about each individual logs, especially because you're often worried about cost, you would often want to keep track of how many logs am I getting, or keep track of certain dimensions of that. How many logs are coming in from a specific host, from a specific region, from a specific application. And then the transformation into metrics is a super valuable tool to help you keep the data and reduce costs, obviously improve query times, and so on. Now, as I mentioned, everybody who listening in, feel free to ask questions. We can talk about logs for 3 hours straight, even though this is only 1 hour session. But please let us know what you care to hear more about, because we can go on forever. Now, Michal, we've had logs on Grail in SaaS for now, what, a year?
More than a year now, yes. So since October, 3 years ago. So yeah, it's quite a journey for us and for our customers as well, who were with us from the very early moments, because Grail, in comparison to previous solution, came with a larger scale, and those early adopters were really caring about the size of the ingest and our capabilities to deliver answers on those large data sets, especially with DQL as query language and all the schema on reads, and also dashboarding capabilities with queries on logs, but also metrics that you set.
So I actually got a couple of questions around, first, a lot of supporting us in the logs to metric use case. It's definitely a useful one. Actually, like Claire mentioned, she's seeing it for AI. I actually haven't thought of that. So if you want to expand a bit more about the use case for AI, we would love to hear more about it. I've seen it a lot, often in operational purposes. I haven't thought about it for AI. Could be an interesting use case. And we've got 2 more questions. It's so busy. So let's take this one because it's yeah. Which guys of you want to take it?
I think that's one for Michał, I guess.
The one about integrating Zabbix data metrics into Dynatrace. So I don't know the exact solutions, but when it comes to importing, especially metrics from other sources, we are offering this Ingest API, which is a REST API when you can send any metrics to us. Maybe I can search in a bit in our Dynatrace hub, because maybe we're supporting this with one of our extensions, and then the solution should be out of the box. But if not, you can always customize the ingest using all the open API that is there and send any metrics you want.
Yeah. So essentially, if you're looking to ship metrics into Dynatrace, look into our extensions, whether it's agent extension or ActiveGate extensions. Look at the ingest APIs we have, and also we are working on the hotel metrics specification. I'm not 100% in the details on that, but those are all options. Also, feel free to follow up with us, or if you have any contacts with Dynatrace after this session for more detailed information for your use case. And we also have this question by Janik, more on the, I see Michal found a link on the Zabbix integration with details. So we'll share it with you after the session in the links, so you can dive more into that. So Michal, I think this is another great question for you about the log viewer functionality. Do you want to share a bit more about the processing rules?
The processing rule. So this is a functionality that somehow combines the two worlds that Billy and I are working on. So what this functionality actually does, it configures the open pipeline to transform your logs and extract meaningful fields. So you specify the matcher in this functionality. The matcher comes from your query. So for instance, when you are searching for logs coming from a specific file and you want to extract attribute from that log, maybe some revenue numbers or a status code or whatever that is, with the single click, you're creating a rule specifying your definition of processing, so how to extract something from the content. You store it, and then every new log line that will match the condition you specify will be transformed during ingest. So that's what the functionality does. So it really helps to set the specific domain to your logs for easier filtering and better analytics.
Yeah, and maybe I can add here that so this log processing functionality is already there. You find it in the general settings. We will expand on that with the release of Open Pipeline, which is planned for later the second quarter, and also you can do more in during the ingest. So you can do the processing, you can do metric extraction, you can trigger an anomaly detection, you can later with Open Pipeline you will be able to create a busy event out of it, and you can also you will be able to separate your ingest streams into different pipelines. So if you have, for example, a different technologies that you are focusing on, then you can create one pipeline for each technology and have a nice grouped overview of all the stuff that belongs to that technology.
I think this is a key part of what we're trying to achieve as part of the third generation experience as a whole. I think we often find that there are tons of exciting features and use cases within the Dynatrace platform, and they're not always as easy to access as we would have liked. I think a big part of what we're trying to do now, as we're relaunching some applications over this coming year, is to make a lot of the more advanced use cases much more accessible and more easily found for users, as the processing rules can be accessed with the log viewers, can be accessed with the setting, and soon through the upcoming Open Pipeline app, which allows you to run much more advanced processing in a much easier fashion.
It's more user friendly. It has more explanation. It's visually a bit more attractive, and it's faster to configure. So that's what we're heavily investing in, to make the experience a bit smoother and a better flow overall.
But maybe one thing to remember here is that you don't always need to process your logs before ingesting. With this Grail capabilities and the ability to parse during the read, so on query time, we can transform all your logs on the fly. But the log processing, however, is very useful when you, for instance, plan to use metrics from logs over time. But it's not a must if you're doing some analytics use cases on the data.
I would say that, the huge benefit of schema on Ready is that in theory, you never have to, never have to pre-process your logs. You can always just do everything with a DQL query. So no matter what unexpected issue you're troubleshooting, no matter how unexpected the data you find yourself working with, you can always use DQL to work with it as is, parse JSON and query. You're not limited to only indexing some fields or querying by some fields. You can literally go through, you can parse strings, you can parse JSON, you can restructure the data on the fly as you're querying with full flexibility. So you are always geared to answer any question that comes up on your data. But obviously, things get more complex over time. And if you find yourself writing the same query over and over and over again, especially if it's a complex one, then processing rules is a great way to simplify the data so that next time you're around, you can make it more easier to use. You can have more novice users make use of the same data without worrying so much about the complexity. So it's really a balancing act where things are repeating, where you want to make data more easily accessible. Processing rules are a great tool, but you don't have to cover all the cases ahead of time because Grail offers you the flexibility to do whatever you want with the data on the fly.
Exactly, as you said, like Liran, the power of Grail and DQL in combination with the Notebooks application, where you're building your investigation document, is also the ability to fetch the logs and also transform the data that you are in the logs into time series metric. For instance, to track the response time over time that you found in all your access log from, I don't know, a CDN or web server or whatever that is. That's a really cool feature.
A few minutes ago, Bo asked the question, and we had so much coming in to talk about, so we left you behind. So now is a good time to bring up the question. Now, the best way to ingest data into an observability platform is a whole huge topic by itself. But if I had to answer that in one word, the answer would be one agent. If you're using the Dynatrace platform, the power of the one agent is that it allows you to collect and ingest all the data you want, or not all the data you want, but a lot, and truly a lot of the data you want, with a single solution, with zero configuration. It automatically traces stuff, it integrates with OTel, it automatically identifies logs and collects logs, and you can actually use it both for traditional host-based monitoring for Java Enterprise and so on and so forth, but you can also actually use it for Kubernetes, and you can either install it on the nodes, or you can install it using an operator. So even it's called a one agent, and it comes as a single package that covers everything. It actually has a few flavors to suit your different needs. Now, the one agent isn't the only thing we offer. It's the most complete solution, but we also offer a lot of flexibility in other approaches. We have ingest APIs. We've touched upon some of them previously. We obviously support OTLP. We support REST. You have tons of options to customize things. Depending on the complexity of your environment and the amount of data you want to ingest, it could be a couple of minutes. It could be more of a bit of a bigger project, depending on how big and varied your environment is. And generally speaking, this is something our solution engineers and professional services are very good at doing. But really, without more context, it might be a bit hard to answer that question. But Thomas, Michal, do you have any thoughts you want to add?
Yeah, I have one point to add, because we started this conversation about our favorite programming languages, right? And there is actually one very great thing about one agent, and it's full stack mode. when it comes to logs and traces, because one agent for most of the programming languages and logging framework can automatically enrich your log lines with corresponding trace ID, so that logs are already contextualized not only based on the source where they come from, so is it host, is it Kubernetes, whatever. It's also contextualized based on the trace, based on the transaction that the user performed. It's actually interesting because many of our early adopters for logs powered by Grail were already using Dynatrace as APM, but their logs were somewhere else. And when they were telling us the stories, how their developers are working, they were saying, yeah, so what our developers are doing, they're using Dynatrace as APM. They are copy pasting the trace ID, and then they go to a logging solution to search for the trace ID, and the other way around. And now when they are fully on Dynatrace with logs and traces and metrics and all the other signals, it's just a single click.
Yeah.
So,
And also, so as you know, the open pipeline advocate here, I would like to add that with this approach of the unified ingest, it as soon as data enters Dynatrace, you have a lot of control over it, and also that's so. One agent has a lot of upsides, as Michał mentioned, especially the enrichment and all the tracing capability that it has. The log line itself, for us, it's really, we can handle, I would say, almost everything, and we make it as easy as possible to send us data wherever you have it and whatever system you are using. You can point it to Dynatrace and we will accept it, and you can then filter through it and process it as you want, or just save it to Grail and do with the schema on read, as we said earlier.
So now, Bo, if you have any more specific questions about how to ingest from specific formats or specific tools, we would be happy to provide more specific answers or point you in the right directions. Otherwise, I hope we've helped a bit. So we've got another question from Michael, which popped up just a couple of minutes ago about can you use SQL syntax to get data from?
No, that's USQL. That's
what's
yeah,
USQL?
Yeah, exactly. So I was in digital experience before. That's why I know what it is. It's a specific language that we have in Dynatrace in our current product to query user sessions.
Oh,
and
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
you weren't here.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've only been Dynatrace for 7 months. I feel like I'm the newest person in every meeting I have with Dynatrace. Everybody's been here for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Only I've been here just 7 months.
Yeah. So we have DQL now as a new lingua franca, basically for Dynatrace, and it's more it has much more flexibility and much a richer feature set than USQL had or has, and it's a different pattern. Now it's a piping language. USQL is based on a classic SQL pattern. So DQL is the way to query Grail. DQL is the way to do to configure processing, and USQL will not be supported by Grail.
Yeah,
and
but
actually, like DQL is like. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we do have some other alternatives. So it's not just purely DQL. I think DQL is the lingua franca, as you mentioned. But first, it would be super interesting to maybe have a converter from USQL to DQL if there are many users who have that. So it's definitely an interesting use case and a feature request we can submit to the relevant teams. But it's also worth noting a couple of other features we have for querying. First, obviously, the log viewer, which Michał can probably talk more about, and how to just use UI to query. But also important that we have actually a feature in preview, the Code Davis Copilot, which actually allows you to use natural language to just specify what you want, and then have Davis build the DQL query for you. So you can just write your own It's actually a feature within the notebook itself. So instead of having to write DQL in the notebook, you write with whatever you want, natural language. Davis processes that, looks at the data, builds a query for you, and then execute it on your behalf. And you see the query, you see the data, you can adjust, you can adapt. So that's actually a very powerful use case that's available currently in preview. And if you're just new to DQL and looking for an easy way to jump in, then I would definitely take a look at that. Anything else on the log viewer you would like to share on the querying?
What I would like to share is another advantage of DQL. As Thomas said, this will be the standard language for querying Grail, and it's also widely used across the platform, like a one language to rule them all, because now with DQL, you're able to join the traces data, the metrics data, the logs, and whatever is stored with Grail with a single language, where in the past you had multiple syntax to do, like entity, selectors, and stuff like that. Now we are standardizing the entire platform on DQL, which is a very user-friendly language. When it comes to the log viewer and the ability to query logs without actually writing DQL, what's interesting is that when we launched the Grail, majority of the users were super into DQL, and we were collecting feedback that, wow, this language is super easy to learn. We just love it. It's super easy to start using it and find the data that we need. But what we saw over time is that actually more and more of our users are now sticking to the method of easier exploration with clicks in the explore logs notebooks or in the log viewer. But in the past it was different. Like there were more advanced users really jumping into DQL. But now many features like parsing or summarize command or make time series command is already supported in this querying with clicks query builder components.
Another question, Michal, I'm sure you would love, is the question about dashboards based on logs by Farid. And it's like you've been waiting for this the entire session.
Well, yeah. Recently, I was building a lot of dashboards when I was doing some business analysis for our internal team to set some priorities on the roadmap items. So yes, the first thing that you can always consider is pinning your DQL queries to the dashboard and selecting different visualization types and so on. But there is one disadvantage, though, that it takes some time to run the log query, and depending on the data size, it may take a while to generate the dashboard based purely on log records. That's why with this log-based metrics is something that we definitely recommend for dashboards that you are using on your TV, on your screens, or for observability use cases that are aggregating the data. So long story short, DQL queries for logs pinned to dashboard make a lot of sense when you need access to log records. Like for instance, you're searching for samples of logs that are matching specific phrase. But if you're working with aggregates based on logs, or you want to do charting, then I would recommend log-based metrics. Actually, I can share another document where we're explaining different dashboarding strategies with both DQL queries and with metrics, with advantages and disadvantages of
Again,
different solutions.
it's completely up to you. You have the tools to do both. There are pros, and you definitely have big pros if you go down the metrics route for long-term usage, but you don't have to. You can always use directly dashboards and logs. It's going to work. It's going to work great. It's going to be fun. It might end up being a bit slower because metrics are hyper efficient, but it really depends on your use case, and don't bother over optimizing or optimizing if you don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
There was a question about
well, there is actually one super great benefit that I like about our platform is that whenever in any kind of application there is a DQL query run in the background, with the intent mechanism, you can just pin the underlying query to the dashboard. So if you're in the context of the infra application and you found an interesting log line or interesting log analysis, you can use the open with functionality and pin it directly to the dashboard, or kick off an automation workflow, or do anything you want with that query. That's a super powerful thing and really optimizes the path to create dashboards or store your findings in a notebook.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring it up, because I think we haven't touched upon that, but one of the key advantages of having logs within Dynatrace and so enriched is the data in context, which we're trying to build everywhere. And many of the new screens, you can just have see logs from everywhere. So you're looking at the trace, you can instantly see logs from the trace. You're looking at the host, you can instantly see logs from the host, from the pod. Whatever object you're looking at, whatever context you're in, you can see the most relevant logs right there, or move over to the logs viewer for more detailed view. But it's very integrated into everything you're doing, into everywhere you are all along. There was a question about Dynatrace sharing data. I'm completely in no position to answer any such question. I can either confirm or deny or anything about that. You should really reach out to the relevant privacy officers at Dynatrace or anyone on the security team. I'm in no position to answer any of that. We did get some cool question about integrating external logs into Dynatrace, and there are really quite a few strategies around that. Whether the firewall already comes in with some sort of log shipping mechanism, or do you need to extract it? But there are quite a few options, right, Michal?
Exactly. For the situations where you cannot install one agent, we developed the Ingestion API that you can start sending your logs to in the OpenTelemetry format, as JSON or as plain text. But some of the integrations, like with FluentBit, FluentD, Logstash, OpenTelemetry Collector, or cloud vendors, are supported by Dynatrace. We'll send you a link to the documentation that really describes all the use cases. So as you, Liran, said, it's all about checking the technology, trying to find if we are already supporting it in Dynatrace Hub, and then all the instructions are there, how to start sending your logs, because maybe there is, for instance, syslog protocol that's on this firewall or whatever other technology, and you can start sending those logs right away with one of the recommended methods where one agent is actually not required.
Yeah. So we support pretty much all the standard ways. If you found the standard way we don't support, let us know. And if you have a non-standard firewall or whatever on your hands, then we do offer APIs to let you do your magic yourself.
Exactly, yeah.
Do we have any questions I missed, or do we want to keep going about other topics?
I think we have all questions so far.
So actually, I think one of the key things I've always heard people, complaining about is how expensive logs are. And when it comes to Dynatrace, you actually have a very different way to price logs. And what are some of the customer reactions around this new approach to log pricing? Maybe you can share in a few words what it is, the strategy, and why do customers like it?
Even don't know where to start, because, as you said, our pricing is a bit different to what you have on the market shelves, because it combines three different measurements. So you're charged for the data that you're ingesting and process in Dynatrace, the data that you stored, so for retention, depending on the amount of days that you want to keep your data for. And the surprising component is that we are charging you for the queries, so for the data that we actually scan. I know it sounds
which allows
maybe
you,
as
which allows
maybe
us to charge you way less on the other two components.
Exactly. That's one thing. And when we were discussing this model with our early adopters, it was a surprise for them as well. But honestly, when we discussed this, they were all saying, yeah, you know what? But in reality, we're actually using only, 5% of our logs. treat them more as an insurance in case of incident. So, this real-time access to the logs is not always necessary for us. So we are keeping them as, in a cold storage and whatnot. And with Dynatrace, you don't need that. You can keep your logs for as long as you want. You have the real-time access to all the logs throughout the entire retention. And what you're only charged for is the query and the ingest price, because the Grail is also like not an index-based database. The cost of storage are also not that high. So that's a really efficient way of managing and querying logs that we are offering to our customers, and a game changer in my opinion, especially if you take a look at the trends that every single year we are generating more and more logs coming from external systems for business analytics and whatnot. Dealing with all this information is becoming a challenge of its own, especially on indexed databases where you need to maintain all the indices and underlying infrastructure.
Yeah, I would even say that I'm proud to say that we have offer the most controls over cost compared to pretty much every other vendor. We allow you to control retention by the day, so you can have 10 days, 11 days, 12 days, 205 days, no matter how much. It's entirely up to you. You don't have to talk to anyone. You just set it on the storage layer. You can divide up. You can have different logs stored for different time periods. You can have some logs stored for a week, other logs stored for a year. Entirely up to you. And there are no commitments, no overspend, no overcharges, you're never running out of quota. You just send us the log. You'll be fairly billed for whatever you send. No more, no less, no penalties, no commitments. And that's
I think Liran dropped, but
Yeah.
he's totally right. This model definitely helps with managing your costs, managing your budgets, and really pay for the value that you're getting. So not for this expensive storage for data that you will never use, but you only pay where you're getting value out of logs. So that's a beneficial thing.
Yeah. So where did you lose me?
You dropped for a while, but we explained the point that in Dynatrace, you only pay for the value and not for the underlying expensive storage.
Yeah.
And in the meanwhile, we got the next question regarding what to do with if I want to exclude debug logs from my ingest. So here we are offering actually two ways of dealing with that. One is, of course, one agent, so our recommended way. And there already on the edge, you can configure all the exclusions based on the level, based on the content that is there. So the data will never leave the host and will not be sent in Dynatrace. But of course, Billy, you can maybe tell a bit more what we're doing also on the cluster, so with the open pipeline.
Yeah, so and also here we have, so once it reaches the cluster, there are still two options. So you can, during the processing, you can match those log lines. So it's a matching. You create rules in log processing, and they have a matching condition. And you could say the matching condition log level is equal to debug, and then below in the processing section you say drop it, and then it's gone immediately. But you might also want to count them, maybe. Sorry for that. You might want to count them because there might be some background information, or you might want to count something that's in those log lines, but you don't want to keep the log lines themselves. So then you don't drop them in the processing; you keep them. They still go through metric extraction, and then you assign them you don't assign them to any bucket. So they are processed during the ingest, but then they are not stored in Grail. So I think that's a great way to, depending on what you need, depending on your use case, to handle the the case where you do not want to persist for a longer time.
I would even challenge the concept of not keeping the logs.
Oh, yeah.
Usually when I speak to developers and they say I don't want the debug logs, it's not usually I don't want the debug logs. It's just I can't afford them, either because it's costing me too much or because it's breaking my database. Whatever, I'm not going to name anything, but whatever database you're using, maybe the debug logs are crashing it, making ingest impossible or querying impossible. So I would challenge you, one, the scale of Grail is enormous. Those guys can share more about the numbers, but it won't break if you send us the debug logs. And second, due to the pricing scheme that Michal has mentioned, you could have the logs as long as you don't query them. The costs are pretty much negligible, and you could even set a lower retention time for them. And you might be surprised that when you're using Grails and you're using the Dynatrace platform, keeping the debug logs, especially for a short period of time, is not costing as much as you're worried about. And there could be a lot of value in those logs. I'm not saying you have to keep them, but maybe you can afford to. Would you guys want to share a bit about the numbers?
No, and also here, you don't have to keep everything, but you have a rich set of choices. But keeping it for a short amount of time is definitely a very good option that doesn't cost much. Yeah. So
you guys
I
want
can
to
talk
a bit more about the scale.
Yeah, I can. To that, I can say with the GA of Open Pipeline, we are ready to ingest 500 terabytes of data per day, and throughout 2024, we are increasing that capacity, and we're aiming for 1 petabyte at the beginning of 2025, and then even going further beyond that number. So scale should not be a limiting factor, I think. Maybe so for Grail it's the same. We are scaling it in a similar way. So what we can ingest, it can also be kept in Grail. I must admit I do not know the exact limits of what we can store in Grail. I don't know, Michał, do you know?
No, I don't exactly know the details, but since I know the underlying architecture, I would say we shouldn't worry that much about the size of the data. You can keep it, and we see the volumes are rapidly growing, as you said, in up to petabytes a day of the data that we're ingesting. And today we're already every day we're scanning tens of petabytes to deliver the answers to our customers, and the number is rapidly growing with adoption of Grail without disruption. So that's a really impressive thing for us as well. Oh, that's a very good question, because I was helping when I was helping to ingest the database, the logs from databases that are stored in the database in context of the new application on our platform, so the database application. So depending on the database technology, we are offering different extensions in Dynatrace Hub. So you can go to the Dynatrace Hub, search for your database technology. Maybe if it's Oracle, you just go there, activate the extension, and your logs will be available in the databases app, already contextualized, pre-processed, ready for you to consume.
That's a great question. Actually, do we have a lab environment for playing around with Dynatrace logs? So actually, I know we do have a Dynatrace playground, but I'm not in the weeds of the technicalities of that. Are you guys familiar with it?
I can shed some light. So to access this environment, you have to create a trial account, and there you will have the direct link to the playground with pre-populated data where you can play around with different applications to have different logs.
And can you always access the playground from a paid account?
I think so. I don't know the exact detail, but I don't know the reason why it wouldn't be possible. So
yeah, so if we do have a playground account, especially if you have an account, just reach out. We'll also share instructions for the playground account in the chat and after the session. So feel free to pursue that, and you can kind of explore that. And We have Bo is following up with us. It's a great question, Bo. We really love the ping pong here, keeping multiple threads of the conversation going. So I'm wondering about the database I would look at some log shipping tools, whether it's cloud-based or open source based. Some of them can read from database, and obviously depends on which database, and we support pretty much all of the common logging tools we support. So let's say, if your database can be read by FluentBit or FluentD, and then you can just put it in the middle, and then have that read from the database and have that shipped to Dynatrace. I'm not familiar with any specific integration we have with the database, but we will check it out after the session. You obviously can write code to read from the database and convert it to OTel logs or make REST API calls or whatever is most convenient for you. And you can always reach out to your accounting, solution engineering, and potentially professional services to help you with the process. So we actually have a great question by Jorg around one of the features I'm most proud of, which is our security and access control. Now, before we dive into the specifics of the answer, let's make sure we get everyone a quick overview of how security is managed in Grail. Who wants to have the pleasure?
I really don't know where to start, Liran, but since it's your favorite feature, maybe you can start and we can share some insights.
With the simple stuff. Essentially, at its core, Grail offers record-level security, which is the best approach. Think about it. For each individual log line has its own security. You can control who accesses it specifically. There are multiple attributes you can use at the log level. You can to control who has access to it, such as the host name it's coming from or the Kubernetes cluster it's coming from, and so on and so forth. And this is all done within the identity and access management control, which is a pretty powerful tool within Dynatrace that's also expected to have some pretty big user experience enhancements over the next few months to make it even easier to use. Now, currently, there are limits. You can only set up to 200 policies within the IAM account. This is a limit that's being worked on. I would also mention that as part of the enhancements we're building into the IAM, we are also working very hard to reduce the number of different policies customers need to create by doing better aggregation and simplification of the policies, so that for the most common use cases, you will find yourself with far fewer policies and much easier to manage access. Now, if you have a specific account where you need more policies, you need some flexibility there, I would recommend reaching out to the accounting on the Dynatrace side to see if they can help you optimize the policies or kind of tweak things to get whatever you need done effectively.
Yeah. Maybe just to add one more thing there is, of course, we are supporting all the standard fields that you're typically using, like the log source, the host name, and so on to manage the rights. But we're also offering a concept called security context, where you can basically process the log, assign a specific security context, maybe like logs from multiple sources can have the shared security context that is then assigned to the same team maybe. And this is, as Liran said, something worth discussing with the services team to help to plan better the strategy, because also the more policies you create, the more management of it is required. So maybe there are different ways to actually achieve the same without the overhead for maintenance of specific configuration.
Yeah. This might also serve as a workaround, by the way, to reduce the number of policies you have. But
or a valid solution, right?
Yeah, obviously depending on the need. Again, obviously, if you have a big enough account and you have more than 200 policies, then the accounting will be happy to help you optimize things and share with you more details on the upcoming features in the roadmap.
We
Any
shared some
final thoughts?
additional information.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that we shared on the chat some additional information regarding permissions and security context. You can always dive deeper then and learn more.
Any final thoughts? Anything you would love to share with our audience that you feel we haven't touched upon in this session?
Very good question. I'm actually very happy that we talked so much about the ingestion. Because like whenever I'm demonstrating the analytics capabilities with notebooks, with DQL and so on, I'm always getting questions about the ingest, because I mean there is no analytics without the data being ingested. So that's really cool that we talked about these things. But when it comes to the topics that we probably didn't touch that much, is the Dynatrace is a unified platform for observability and security, right? So we collect the data and give you the ability to query those data with DQL and some other mechanisms that are also deriving the answers that are then required for future automation. So with all the Davis capabilities that are embracing logs, metrics, and other signals, we're making your life much easier. And it's also very important to remember that, you know, with Davis Copilot or with Davis analyzers, you can do much more than just a simple query on the data. You can do predictions, you can do anomaly detection, and all the things that are, you know, beyond a simple log analytics journey for developers. Maybe you can identify some trends that in a particular application there is a sudden growth of the errors in your logs, and that may mean that in the upcoming days there will be like a serious incident. So that's a really powerful thing, that with combining all the things and the machine learning algorithm, statistical algorithm, predictions, and AI, we can give you better answers.
Yeah.
I think we
Well
didn't
said,
discuss
Michał,
this
yeah.
that much.
Yeah. I mean,
How about you,
generally,
Thomas?
yeah. So generally, I'm just thinking that I want to reiterate that we have our product ideas forum. So if you have any, you know, needs and any ideas for our product, or you see anything in your company that Dynatrace should solve, you should let us know. We are monitoring these ideas. We are commenting on the ideas, and if you give us some background, then we try to come up with a solution that really fits your problem.
Maybe also one beneficial thing to take a look when you were play around in the playground or in your Dynatrace environment are the new applications that we just launched in Perform. So the cloud application infrastructure, Kubernetes and databases application, because they all have this tab called logs, where we are actually giving you recommendations for useful queries there. So for instance, maybe on a host there was a problem detected by Davis, and then with a single click you are getting all the logs in the time frame of that particular problem and the particular entity that was taking part of the problem, and then it's way easier for you to navigate through logs, understand what was really happening there, and using the surrounding logs functionality, you can see what happened before and after the selected, for instance, error message, or thanks to the enrichment with trace, you will be able to see a specific logs from a specific transaction that was part of this problematic period detected by Davis. Really cool stuff that we are doing today with logs in context and with the new applications that are available thanks to Grail and the new platform.
Yeah. We would love to hear any last questions you guys have in the audience. We have a few more minutes, and if you have any follow-up questions or any new questions or anything we've missed, we would be more than happy to discuss it. Yeah, I don't think there has been any questions we've missed so far.
Doesn't look like.
So I think we're done for it. You guys want to share your favorite operating system before we depart?
Oh, that's a controversial question for an ending of
Yeah.
this session, Liran.
Flame war.
Yeah, it's a
I mean, like
cliffhanger.
this, still better than spaces versus tabs discussion.
Oh,
Oh God, no, no, we're not going there.
oh, we got a question.
Oh, that's a real question. I'm so sorry you won't go into the
Thank you,
operating
thank
system
you.
discussion. Batch workload detection.
I think a good solution here, Thomas, would be to go to community, post your question there, and the community team will also help to find a PM owner for that, and probably you will get answers because maybe someone also on the community already is using some kind of integration to monitor technology that you mentioned. Our community team and the community also on the forum there is super helpful when it comes to providing sometimes non-trivial answers or the way to combine existing solution to fulfill your use case. That's a really cool place to pose this kind of questions, as Thomas mentioned.
So,
Yeah.
so thanks everybody. It's been super fun when you're around. I guess we're all going to have to patiently wait by for the next Ask Me Anything to learn more about Michal's favorite operating system. And see you all next time.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Pleasure being here. Thanks. Have fun with logs.